Hello and welcome to Plot Twisters.
This is a podcast where we take movies and twist the plot to see if we can make them better, and if not, fresher.
At the moment, we're talking about teen movies from the 90s.
On this episode, Dangerous Minds from 1995.
I'm Anders, and I'm not sleepy, and there's no place I'm going to.
I'm Emma. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
So that's a poem that you just said there.
Finally
Poem, right?
bringing a little bit of class to this podcast.
God, if I'd have known, I would have worn my tux this evening. Jeez. Set the good silver on the table tonight. We're reading poetry.
Absolutely.
Can I shock you, Emma? Can I shock you?
You do on a regular basis, but please go ahead.
Well, I'm going to continue that tradition when I tell you that I have technically heard of Dylan Thomas.
Oh. You've heard of one of the most famous poets
ever.
Wow.
I got Dylan Thomas, I got Shakespeare, and I got Maya Angelou.
Yeah.
Huh? And the guy with the who talks about the raven, right? And how he won't go away.
Edgar. Yeah.
That guy.
EAP.
EAP. R.I.P.
Spooky boy Edgar Allan Poe.
Quoth the Raven, he died a while ago. Hey, so we're here to talk about the 1995 classic Dangerous Minds. And not to ask you the same question that I've been asking you for 25 episodes, but hey Emma, you ever seen this movie before doing it for the podcast?
Nope, haven't heard of it. Totally new to me.
You never heard of it?
Nope.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, okay, yeah, fair enough.
Look, we know this. There was a vacuum in time in which every movie suddenly became totally invisible to me, and that, was the 90s if it wasn't a Disney film. So...
Yeah, I get it. I mean,
we know this.
The same year, around the same time, The Lion King came out. So you had your hands full with other cinema. You weren't messing around with Dangerous Minds.
When I think about, I'd love to watch a movie from the 90s, I take 2 seconds to think about it, and then I go, I guess I'm just going to watch The Lion King again.
That or Mulan, am I right?
Yeah, or Clueless again.
Clueless is not an animated film.
No, I know. Yeah, sometimes I stray off the animated path, but very rarely.
Oh my goodness. I not only have I heard of this movie, this is a big deal for me. This was the first ever R-rated movie that I saw.
Ooh. Now just remind me because I'm still not fully clued up on the American rating systems. What does R-rated mean? I
think you have to be 17 or something, or 18. You have to be a grown-up because you're not allowed to hear bad words and violence and stuff.
Sure,
which this movie didn't really have very many bad words, and it had a little bit of violence, but it seems so tame watching it today. So tame. And yet, so I watched it when I saw it in the theater. So I was 13? I saw it when I was 13.
Snuck in.
Well, yeah. So here's what we did, right?
Oh, gosh.
So my friend Carl and I, we got dropped off at Regal Cinemas. Shout out to Regal Cinemas in Huntington Valley, Pennsylvania. So Carl's mom drops us off, and we went and bought tickets to a film that was also playing that very day called Angus, which I've never seen because we went into the theater and watched Dangerous Minds instead, and we felt like real badasses.
Wow. I've never done anything as naughty as that.
Well, you haven't lived, Emma. You have not lived.
Yeah.
That's sad, right? Get
the
out
theme
there.
Of this podcast. Yeah.
Break some rules, right? Break some hearts. Break some ticket stubs. Go see a movie go pay for a movie, but then see a different movie wherein the theater probably doesn't care because they've already got your money. So what do they care if you watched a different piece of film that they're broadcasting? The upshot was we saw the movie, and then we lied to my friend's mom that we had seen a different movie. And I remember thinking how cool we were and how like edgy this movie was. And then I haven't seen it since 1995.
Mm.
The second viewing of this film in my life was yesterday.
That's cool. That's what we want here, really, isn't it? We want Anders in 1995 versus Anders in 2020. It's the showdown.
Exactly.
What's changed?
I don't know. Very little in many ways, but so much in other ways. You know,
Yeah.
we're all just mirrors upon mirrors upon mirrors of ourselves.
Totally.
If you will. So seeing as though that I've seen it 100% more than you, 200% more. How does math work? I've seen it twice as many times as you've seen this movie. How
Yes.
about I do the rundown? Is that cool?
Sounds great.
All right. Dangerous Minds. Guess what? This movie stars Catwoman herself, Michelle Pfeiffer.
Wow.
Meow. Cat sounds.
Sorry. Michelle, cat
Cat
sounds,
sounds.
Pfeiffer.
Exactly. And I'm other than Michelle Pfeiffer, I mean, is there anyone else that's done anything in this movie?
Yes, there was. There was like one I recognized.
Who dat?
So it was the character was Irene Roberts, so it was Callie's mum, I believe.
Oh yeah.
That's V from Orange is the New Black.
What?
Yeah, like the coolest character ever,
for
right?
Real?
Yeah, she
Dude,
was also
I
in
love
Selma.
I love
She's a really cool actress called Lorraine Toussaint.
That's great. I
What
love
a
that show
what a
so
character.
much.
But yes, the rest I'm
Right.
not so sure about.
The rest not so much. But it doesn't matter because Catwoman and V from O is the New B were in this movie.
Absolutely.
That kills. So here's what happens in Dangerous Minds. Michelle Pfeiffer's character, Luann Johnson. She's a former Marine. She's done lots of different things in her life, and we meet her when she's deciding that she wants to be a teacher. So she goes in with her friend Hal, who's a teacher in this high school, for a job interview, thinking I might get a part-time job. Turns out that they've got a real staffing problem, right? They're desperate.
She's literally like, "When can you start?" The second she walks in the door.
Yeah. She goes, "When can you start?" And Luann goes, "I don't know. I guess soon. I haven't really thought about it." The upshot is she gets hired as a high school teacher, and she gets sold this story that she's going to be teaching a very special group of kids, and they are a very special group of kids, in that they are. I don't know. They're a class of kids that the teachers have deemed unteachable. Well, that's fine because Luann used to be in the Marines. So first she teaches them some karate, and then she bribes them with candy. So it's all really cool, good stuff. Then she becomes emotionally invested in the kids, and the kids become emotionally invested in her. She takes a real interest in a few of the kids' storylines, spends a lot of time with them out of school, including but not limited to just going to their houses to say they're good kids, taking them out to dinner, and inviting Emilio to stay at her house so he doesn't get murdered. But then he does get murdered, and everyone's super sad about that. There's a lot of elements and sort of allusions to just a whole systemic problem with the education system, and it's all very bad. And then in the end, Luann is like, "I'm going to quit teaching because I can't handle this." And then the kids are like, "Don't quit teaching. We think you're a great teacher." And then she goes, "I guess I'm going to keep teaching." And that's the movie Dangerous Minds.
It's inspirational teacher fixes kids' lives movie.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Template C.
You're the man now, dog.
Yeah.
Etc.
Exactly. Yeah. School of Rock did it better. What did you think of this film then? What did you think about it? I mean,
as
what
I
did you
said-
think 1995 Anders versus 2020 Anders? Or 2021 Anders?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Future times.
if we want to pull back the curtain just for 1 second, and then I'll answer your question, we can tell our listeners that it is in fact New Year's Eve, right? And I know what you're thinking. You guys are so cool. What are you doing recording your podcast on New Year's Eve? Well, I think you answered your own
I don't
question.
think they think that we're cool.
What are you talking about?
I'm fairly certain by this point they realise that we're not very cool.
I know for a fact that we are cool.
Okay.
I mean, have we talked about how many board games we own collectively? It's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah.
When I was a teenager, I thought this movie was cool and a little bit edgy, and I remember thinking it was really cool. Grown up 2020/2021 me, I thought it was a little bit cheesy and a little bit off the mark, right?
Yeah.
To what it could have been. And again, not to get hung up on it, but like, I really didn't like her teaching style. I just don't think that you should use candy as a motivational tool for learning. That felt it was a little bit condescending. I just didn't get it.
There's a couple of things that she does as a teacher that are a bit weird. Like, she goes for dinner with one of them.
Right.
And it's kind of fine.
She was drinking wine.
She keeps going to their houses as well, and like, she gets called out for going out to the amusement park with them, and it's like, doing all of that stuff in a movie is fine, but it's about how the movie frames that for you.
Yeah.
And it kind of framed it as though she was the one who was sort of being groundbreaking and in the right. And I think that's like, she certainly had an unusual approach. But yeah, the bribery and the taking a student out for dinner was a bit.
You're not allowed
iffy.
to do that. I'm pretty sure you 100% are not allowed to. You can't just take a bunch of kids to an amusement park without permission slips. I don't want to side with the principal, who seemed a little out of touch there, but like, hey, you can't do that. And also, you definitely can't. You can't hug them, and you can't give them candy, and you can't take them out to dinner because, Luann, they're children, and you're a teacher. What are you doing? Didn't like it.
Yeah, it's weird. You're right. I think it was cheesy. A moment that really stood out to me for like ultra cheesiness was the discussion. It was the scene where it's like, I will not wait for death to come around.
Right.
And they're discussing the meaning of this quote, and it's that kind of, it's a turning point where the kids are starting to respect Luann, and they're starting to listen to her and kind of get her message. And it was an interesting discussion, but then they started playing this really cheesy, kind of like,
cheesy. Yes.
I don't even know what the word is. You probably know better than I do, but it's kind of like whatever genre that music is. It's
bad
like
music,
and it's like really overly emotional. And they played that over the top of it, which kind of silenced the conversation, and it like got louder and louder. It was like, hey, I want to hear what they're saying.
Yeah,
That's a really interesting discussion.
That was so 90s though, right? Like, we can't just have dry, like, awkward, no backing music dialogue. We have to put some cheese in there, because it's motivational, right? So they made it like almost like a montage, and it's like, no, if this movie was made today, they would have just had dialogue. People can handle just dialogue without having to color it with music.
Absolutely. And it's kind of like, I think for me, one of the strengths of the film was the themes that it touched on. And in a way, it is an emotional film, like particularly when Amelia got shot, I teared up a little bit. But it's emotional because it's talking about things that are really, it's talking about things that are real, and it's talking about things that happen.
Right.
And those are all things that I think neither of us are really qualified to comment on, because we have very, very limited experience of it. But when you're creating a movie, it's not a documentary, right? You're not just saying, this is the way the world is, this is how things happen, these are these people, they're real, these are these people, they're real, right? There's always got to be a driving thread that pulls together the story, that makes it interesting, because otherwise, 90 minutes of time isn't enough to completely encapsulate what you want to talk about. If there's no story, you have to have that story there to do that. And I think it's, you've got to break that down into great dialogue. And if you're cutting over the dialogue, and if you're kind of simplifying the dialogue as well, it really waters down the message, and it's like you say, it ends up just a bit cheesy. There's just a lot of like these kind of hard-hitting one-liners, and you just feel like, all right. like the thing she says as she's walking away, which was they were like, why do you want to stay? And she goes, oh, because they said I was the light. And I get what you're trying to do. Like, you're saying, you're an inspirational teacher, you believed in these people, you gave them this chance where other people wouldn't, great. But also, it's just it's just a bit, ooh,
Yeah, exactly.
you know.
And I'm glad that you mentioned School of Rock, because I've been thinking about movies that have done this thing a lot better. School of Rock definitely is one of them, right?
Oh yeah.
I would take Mr. Schneebly over Ms. Johnson any day of the week. In that, like, he had to win them over and learn how to be a teacher, faking it the whole time, because he also, like Luann, had no training, right? So,
Yeah.
but that movie went really well. Or if you want to go, really inspirational, I would even say that that movie with Sean Connery in it, Finding Forrester. You ever see that movie?
Yeah.
And that's the one where he goes, "You're the man now, dog," right?
Yeah. Or like Dead Poet Society is another one.
Or Dead Poet Society. Oh, Captain, my Captain, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
Right?
What's interesting though is all of those films take place in like quite privileged schools.
Yes.
So a lot of the expectation that's put upon kids is like, oh, your parents really want you to achieve and you have a lot of opportunities available to you. So the kind of teaching element that comes into it is more like, you know.
Yeah.
It's from an underdog, and it's from someone who's less proper, which is interesting. But the thing that makes School of Rock so fantastic is the character development. And like, I know I bang on about this every time. You're all sick of hearing me talk about this, but it's always down to the character development. These films, you are just left with a sense of not fully understanding who it is you're learning about, and who, who's carrying the story, because they're not introduced properly and they're not explained to you properly. Like Luann, we don't really know much about her, other than the fact that she was a Marine, she's inexperienced, and that she was divorced. But I think we hear about her divorce very, very late into the film, and it's weird because it's a very short film. It's an hour and a half film.
Yeah.
They could have put like a 20-minute section building up just before that, talking about her and who she is and her life, because, there's so much that we could have learned about her and why she's there. Because the issue with her character was she came into this school, she saw people who she saw as, being deprived, as being potential dropouts. So she wanted to help them. But we weren't told why. We were just told that she wanted to help them.
Totally.
And the fact that it was also a white woman doing this, with a class of kids who were, a lot of them were people of color. There was a lot of black students.
Yeah.
It does just go into that place of like white saviorism, and it kind of, we're expected to just go along with her, because it's like, well, of course you want to help them, because that's what you should be doing as a righteous white woman. Why wouldn't you want to go in there and save them? We're not given that kind of meat behind her decision.
That's so true. I had, you know what? This is your knowledge of film coming through. There was something that I couldn't quite place that I didn't like about this movie, and I get it. The main character didn't develop at all. No,
but there was opportunities there. There was stuff there for her to do it, and stuff like, we know that she's a Marine, right? Marines receive training, and it's all about discipline, isn't it? I mean, I don't know a huge amount about Marines here, so this is kind of
another thing in this movie that neither of us know much about.
No, right?
But still, we know her backstory, right?
Yeah, yes, my limited understanding of anyone military is that it's about discipline, it's about training, and it's about a sense of responsibility. So all of that's there with her backstory, right? But she didn't really bring any of that. What she brought was the fact that she knows karate.
Okay.
And a love of poetry and literature.
Where did that come from?
Where did that come? The only thing we know is that she had an English literature degree. That's all they said.
Is she?
But why does she love it? Right.
Right. Is she even qualified to be a teacher? We
don't
know. Well, clearly no.
Right?
We don't know anything about her.
Yeah. So it's like when you're coming in to this environment with these kids, what is it that Luann has to offer to them, really? What is it that she has to offer to them that makes us as an audience go, yeah, this is a great, collision between two complementary assets.
Yeah.
Where they can mutually benefit, right?
Whereas, let's take School of Rock, right? Jack Black's character is a musician.
Yes.
We also know that his whole struggle is he's not a professional musician, but he's trying to be. He goes into the school, happens to end up having to pretend to be a teacher, and he has to overcome this whole thing with the kids and show them that he has value that he can bring.
Yep.
And man, you know what? School of Rock's a really good movie.
It's a really good movie. But he's dealing with rejection, and he's dealing with his dream dying, right? And what a great idea to put somebody who is, he's almost like at the start of the film, he's almost at the end of a journey, and he's dealing with people who are at the start of that journey, and they're going in the wrong direction because they care about the wrong things.
Right.
So there's this person who's full of passion saying to them, I've been there, let me show you the right way to go. Whereas in Dangerous Minds, you have somebody who has no experience of this kind of types of people, of their life, nothing to directly relate to them other than the messages that come through poetry. And it's interesting that they do this thing of relating it to Bob Dylan and Dylan Thomas.
right.
Which is like, I can see the connection, but it also just works nicely that they both have the word Dylan.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's kind of like, I don't know enough about Bob Dylan. What does Bob Dylan have to do with the kids in this film?
Why is he part of this? Here's what I think.
Yeah, okay.
I think you already said it, because Dylan Thomas,
Yeah.
Bob Dylan, same name. Or if you want to give him a little bit of credit, and this might be too much credit, like Dylan Thomas is like a classic poet, and Bob Dylan is like a folk musician, so he's the modern day. He's not modern. Even in 1995, he wasn't modern. Dylan was famous in the 60s, man. like why didn't he? Here's what they should have done. They should have found a contemporary artist, maybe a rap artist, right?
Yes.
Like, you've got Coolio already, who's linked to this film. We'll talk about that in a second. Why didn't they just bring in some rap lyrics?
Right.
Right?
It's so weird that they didn't do that.
Hey, kids,
it's so weird that they didn't do that.
Here's a bunch of cool kids in the 90s. You know how I'm going to relate to them? Bob Dylan, the white folk singer from the 1960s who wrote about peace and love. I'm going to connect with these kids. Like, they were all like, who's Dylan Thomas and who's Bob Dylan? We're
road
kids.
to
Who are
Dylan
these
Thomas
people?
is paved with Bob Dylan. Apparently, it's like that's the first stop. Second stop is a Welsh poet.
Man. Dylan Thomas and Tupac. If you want to, connect with these kids in the 90s, connect with them with, at the very least, with something they know.
Yeah, and it's almost like it kind of highlights, well, maybe Luann wouldn't have, like, I don't know, she wouldn't have known any Tupac lyrics, but she also probably wouldn't have taken the time to, like, she didn't she didn't take the time to learn about something that would specifically relate to them, which I think would have been better if she'd kind of gone, right, I need to speak your language in order for you to engage with me, so I need to find out what that is. Right? She just kind of went, well, here's something that makes a bit more sense. You guys like music, right?
You like music,
it's
right?
Bob Dylan.
You're a fan of the troubadour, Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
You know the you're aware of the Tambourine Man. And then they all went, who the heck is that? Woof.
One of the things that was, one of the thoughts that was like swirling around in my head as I was watching this was about education. And, it's really interesting because it's something that is so often done wrong, I think. It's so often mishandled, and I think it can have such a big impact.
Yeah.
In the UK, this is my personal beef with education in the UK.
Ooh, bringing out Emma's personal beef. Let's do it. Light up the grill, because Emma's bringing out her personal beef. Char.
But a lot of the way that education is handled in the UK is based around essentially passing exams and feeding people facts and not really encouraging them to think for themselves very much.
Totally. Yep.
But part of that problem is because we now live in a world where media is so prevalent, and it's it's not only prevalent, it's also very specifically designed to influence us one way or another.
Right.
So being able to kind of, like I say, think for yourself, to step back and to look at something and go, what's this telling me, and why is it telling me that? That's something that's so important, and it is something that I think education can give you. And that's very much what Luann is trying to do in this film, I think. She's trying to say, you will be handed a bunch of stuff in your life, and you can't just accept it at face value. You have to be able to step back and assess it and go, is this right for me, or do I have other options?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most important things that you can learn. That message was in there, and I think it's a great message, but it
Good lesson.
It was again, it was a bit too buried. But the other thing that's really interesting about education that this film made me think about is a big problem with education is that it's designed by nerds, right? People go into education because they love education, and the people who love education are quite often nerds, and people who like receiving information a certain way. They're the ones who make the syllabuses. You know, in this film, the headmaster...
Syllabi.
Thank you. In this film, the headmaster is somebody who clearly values rules and order and dogma, and he's very specific about, you know, you have to knock before you can come in.
Gotta knock.
He's the person who is designing education for these people, and it's not right for them, because you can't have one way that applies to everyone. People do receive things in different ways. And so I liked that she was trying something different. She just didn't go about it in the best way.
No, I'm totally with you. And like, you know, I do believe that education's come a long way from what I can gather, mostly from my 5-year-old's environment. You know, they talk about, listen, my 5-year-old knows about mental health because they talk about it in
no way
first year of school. Yes.
What? That's so cool.
They talk about feelings, and they talk about how it's important to be honest and to talk about how you're feeling. And I think that's pretty amazing.
That is amazing.
You know, and also apparently they don't learn the names of letters anymore. It's all about phonics, and that blows my mind. And I was like, that's a W, and my daughter was like, no, that's a W, and I was like, you don't know what you're talking about.
And you were like, hey,
that's a W. Come on. And then I got a D-, and I had to, you know, I failed algebra or whatever. Which
I think you mean a D-.
Comedy.
Wait.
Jokes. Very much. We'll fix this movie in a second, right? We're gonna make it better. We'll talk about how to make it realer. We'll talk about how to make the main character relate more. But no matter what we do, can we not change the music? Because I super loved the music in this movie.
Yeah.
You are familiar, I hope. If you hadn't seen this movie, please tell me you had heard the Grammy award-winning rap song "Gangsta's Paradise" from this movie.
Not only have I heard it, I've heard it live.
You saw Coolio live?
Yeah.
What? Tell me more. What?
Yeah, I've seen him live.
When?
He came to my university.
For real?
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool, yo.
And he did a couple of songs, and everyone was just going, "Play Gangsta's Paradise."
Yeah.
Over and over, and then he played it, and then I think a bunch of people left. Yeah.
Man, that's so funny.
But you didn't see that coming, did you? Huh? You think I'm just some boring nerd who sits in their house all day playing video games and reading books? But hey, that's all true, and I've also seen Coolio live.
So that's interesting, and I mean, I'm jealous, but let me tell you why that's interesting. Because so the main song on the soundtrack for this movie was, of course, the 1995 hit "Gangsta's Paradise," performed by Coolio, featuring LV. Right. That song was a banger. It's still a banger. It was everywhere in 1995. Literally, like, it would just, you heard it everywhere. When I hear it, I feel like I'm 14 years old again, because it is so steeped in the 90s. What I think is really cool about that song, and something that I didn't know in the 90s, but I definitely learned through the years, so that song is that song samples another song, which is the 1976 Stevie Wonder song, Pastime Paradise, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that song is even cooler, in my opinion. And it's on the album, Songs in the Key of Life. It's an amazing song. And would you like to know? I've seen Stevie Wonder live.
Oh, well then. Ugh.
You know, look at us in our times we saw people live singing their songs. But yeah, so this song originated as a 1976 Stevie Wonder song. It was sampled in the 1995 Coolio song. But I'm going to guess that you and I both like, even more than those, the 1996 parody of Coolio's song by Weird Al Yankovic, Amish Paradise.
Yeah. That's a great song.
Which was also everywhere in 1996. Like, all over the place.
Weird Al is such a
Legend?
funny little output of culture, isn't he? Just like, there's this guy who makes fun of all these songs and they're also really great. I love it.
He's also been doing it for 40 years.
Whoa.
Right? He's been doing it since actually more than that. He's been doing it since the late 70s when he did My Bologna, which was, the version of My Sharona. But and I love Weird Al so much. The first CD that I ever owned was Weird Al Yankovic's The Food album.
Eat it.
I want to give you 3 facts about the songs, and then we can move on to maybe twist this movie. The first is Stevie Wonder's version, right? The original was one of the first versions ever to feature a synthesized string section.
Ooh, that is cool.
Right? That beep 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 beep.
Mm-hmm.
That song is mostly about how we should be more positive and not negative, which I like. Coolio's song is mostly about how it's challenging in the inner city, and that line of "I'm 23, I might not live to see 24." I remember always being really scary. And now as a grown up, I hear it and I just think, oh, that's a really sad reality for a lot of people, and it's really sad and bad. That people would write songs and relate to that type of lyric. And then, of course, Weird Al Yankovic's songs about how being Amish is maybe simple to you, but he really likes it.
We can all relate to that, yeah.
They're all very good for different reasons, and I love it. And I guess for me, being a music nerd, it really tickles me when a song is covered and then covered again.
Yeah.
And that really rules. So, to quote Forrest Gump, that's all I got to say about that. Gump sat alone on a bench in a park. Life's like a box of chocolates. And it's another Weird Al song. I can't remember how it goes.
What's your favorite Weird Al song?
Whoa. That's a big question. Can I think about it for a second?
Nah, you gotta. No, yeah.
I always liked the Plumber song. Better call a plumber, plumber, plumber. Ba 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 baby.
Why not? Why don't we have more songs about plumbing? Songs are always about love and hope and stuff. Why don't we have songs that are just about more general everyday things?
That's what I'm saying.
I like white and nerdy. Should we twist this thing?
Hi. Are you fun and good at talking about movies? Well, we're looking for guests to join us on our podcast. If you'd like to have a go at twisting a movie, shoot us an email at plottwisterspod@gmail.com, or go outside your house and shout loudly, "Emma and Anders, I want to be on your podcast!" If you're within half a mile of my house or Emma's, we'll hear you. What should we do? How should we twist this movie up real good?
We may not come out of this with a specific new plot, because I think the plot is fine. But I'd like to just make some little tweaks along the way. And just change some stuff. How does that sound?
I think it sounds magnifico.
Lovely. So one of the things I already suggested was that we actually just tack on a chunk at the start of this film about Luann and who she is. Now, I didn't mention this in the main segment of our podcast, but this film is based on a book. Not only is it based on a book, books. It's based on a memoir of a real person.
Oh, amazing. Really? Wow.
So it is a real person, which obviously limits us a little bit because we are dealing with someone's actual life here. But I think let's just leave that behind for now. Let's just forget about that and let's treat it as its own, as a thing in its own right. So we need to give her a bit more of a backstory, or we need to at least talk more about some of her backstory.
I bet she has a backstory. We just need to talk.
100%.
Right? She's a real person. Turns out every human's got a backstory, right?
Yeah.
Let's just ask her.
Hey, that's all life is. What's past is prologue, to quote The Tempest.
That's right.
Everything that comes before is your backstory.
And to quote Doc Brown, your future isn't written yet, right? So make it a good one. We're on the same page. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
Of very different novels.
Same number, different books.
Exactly.
Turn to page 42.
It's your kids, Marty. Something's got to be done about your kids.
What we're looking for here is something that is going to make her desire to positively influence the lives of the kids that she's working with feel more authentic. So she needs to have something that she is trying to fix about herself.
Yeah.
Right?
What if I have an idea right off the bat. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Oh, there's no wrong answers at improv. She's a Marine, right?
Uh-huh.
But we also know that she was dishonorably discharged, okay? So let's remember that for a second, right?
Yeah. They never say why.
Didn't even say dishonorably discharged. No problem. It's fine. Totally fine.
Okay, cool.
Don't ask about it. So what if she was a commander or a general or I don't know, whatever. Sorry, military people. I don't know. Maybe she was in charge of new cadets. So she was a teacher for the Marines, basically.
Yeah. Like that.
And she was bad at teaching them. And maybe one of them died or something, and that's why she was dishonorably discharged.
Yeah.
And she wants to correct that, right? And so she realizes that the only way to do that is to she can't do it in the military because she's been kicked out. She's going to be a high school teacher. And the sad reality when the same thing happens again, kind of, with Emilio, breaks her a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah. No, that's great. That works really well because I think you need to have something which is kind of it resonates with her based on a previous experience that she's had, and doing that quite directly I think can be fun. That can work well. I think that what we can also maybe add in is a reason why you might want a character to become a teacher. Obviously there's loads of reasons, but a reason could be is that they are trying to they want a feeling of control, because when you're a teacher, one of the things that you have is you have control over a class. Or rather, even if you don't necessarily have it when you're teaching successfully, that's what you do have. You have the ability to influence people, and you have a class of people who will have to listen to you.
Totally.
So it can be interesting with characters to kind of say, you're looking for control, so you move into a specific place in the world where you can get that. And people often feel like they don't have control because something really bad happens to them. And, it's like, I couldn't stop that from happening. So I need to be able to stop something else bad from happening. And sometimes that can be very extreme in that people kind of get super controlling over their lives. But your example there, I think, works well, because what maybe would make her development more interesting is if she does actually cross the line, but she's recognized as crossing the line in order for her to pursue trying to help these kids.
Yeah.
And like we said, she does kind of do that, but it's not really acknowledged by the film as her crossing a boundary, or slightly it's not really seen as a negative for her. You know, she needs to do something a bit mad.
Yeah.
And she needs to recognize that it was a bit mad. And then she needs to reflect and improve, right?
Totally. And I guess if I'm scrubbing the things that felt icky to me in this, in this film, I would say I would have loved it if the movie had just stuck to she's in the school, the kids aren't listening to her, she has to win them over. Don't use candy, don't take them to the amusement park, don't go to their houses, and definitely don't take any of them out to dinner with wine. I'd love it if it was just like she's a teacher and she obeys the rules a little bit more than she did, because hey, you know what was unbelievable was like she doesn't know how to teach. She's brand new, and they give her the curriculum, and on day one she goes, well, I'm not going to follow this. I'm just going to do my own thing. People who are new in jobs, it takes them at least a year before they start to riff on the job role, right? She should just be teaching them the curriculum, and they don't like her because they don't like teachers. I just wish it was based in the classroom more. And
sure, and that relationship between her and the curriculum, I think, is a potentially strong one. Like, why doesn't she follow? Like, yeah, you're totally right. It seems weird that she wouldn't want to follow the rules because A, she doesn't know what she's doing, and B, she's a military person.
Right.
That's like,
she loves rules.
That's what she will have been familiar with. That would have been her comfort zone.
Totally.
Because going into this scenario, she's totally stepping out of her comfort zone. Why would she be handling that really confidently? Where's that come from? And if she's come there because she was discharged, what streak within her caused her to be discharged that can then be resurrected later on? I think what you're kind of saying there is that it would potentially be good for her to actually at least try and follow the curriculum, maybe even too religiously to start with.
Yeah.
And we see that happening for a while. And it's the kids that say to her, this isn't going to work, you're going to have to try something else.
Right.
And that maybe frustrates her, and she finds that difficult because she didn't really find anything that difficult. The only thing that challenged her was one of her students dying. And as I've said before, grief isn't a personality trait. You can't say
totally.
Someone is just sad, so that's what's made them do this.
Right,
why does she want to leave? Just because she's sad?
Because you're
After
sad.
putting all this work into these kids,
Totally.
There needs to be something in there which is saying, she tried really hard, she pushed through, it didn't work, so she got really down about it.
Yeah.
But then the kids made her realize you can't just bail.
You remember when one of the kids was like, yeah, okay, some of the kids left and one of us died. How about all the rest of us who are still here? You like them more? What, do you not like us? And you're just going to leave? And I'm thinking, and I'm shouting at the TV like, yeah, you know what? If you leave, you are a crappy teacher. You
absolutely
suck.
That is the peak kind of white savior moment, isn't it? Because it's that's what privilege means, right? Having privilege means you get to go home, you get to step away, you get to bail. You can get involved as much as you want, you can be charitable, you can do all the right things, but at the end of the day, if you want to,
you can just go home.
You can go home
to the suburbs.
You're right. It's so important that she realizes that's the reason why she has to stay, because she's got to stick it out. And again, we've already got a great stimulus for her to realize that, because she's from the military and she has a sense of duty that came from that.
Exactly.
It's all there.
You can't go from being dishonorably discharged in your past career to just going, I guess it's not working out, goodbye. And I love the idea of there being moments of flashback between her time in the military and her time as a teacher that will show the difference between the time she failed and the time that she will then ultimately succeed as a teacher.
Yeah.
And I don't, whatever. It doesn't have to be that some cadet died. It doesn't have to be that morbid, but it could be helpful. It would be really cool to show visually the parallels between where she's failed and now where she's growing and succeeding, so that at the end of it, you're like, I was invested in you moving from the military to being a teacher. I wanted you to succeed. These kids were tough, but they were tough because they've had bad experiences with bad teachers and a bad system. So you had to win over a lot, and you did win them over, and that's great. And what I really wanted was for it to be their senior year, so it ends with graduation, and then she could pay that kid the $200. The kid could, and so then the guy could give him the $200 back or whatever.
Like that could have been the whole plot.
Right.
The primary plot could have been: is this guy going to pay her back, and how does he do it? Because it's a really good idea.
Also,
but they just forgot about it.
Sorry. Also, he bought that jacket on the street because he didn't have anything nice to wear to go to dinner, which was a reward for them doing their homework.
Because she took him to this like insanely fancy restaurant, so he felt
like
he had to wear a fancy jacket. She didn't say, "You didn't have to do that.
You didn't have
You're
to do
fine
that.
as you are." Or
just wear whatever
like
you
that,
want.
You know?
Who cares? What are you buying? I'm sorry. Yes, this is a swanky restaurant. So you thought I'll buy a leather jacket to wear to like, hey man, you didn't have to dress up at all. But if you are going to dress up, maybe buy a suit. But don't buy a suit because I shouldn't be taking you to dinner because I'm your teacher. And also, I'll give you money so you can pay back the guy who stole this jacket so he doesn't kill you.
Thus affirming the right thing to do.
She created this problem.
Yeah, she completely created the problem. It was the right thing for him to do to buy a really expensive jacket.
Come on, Catwoman, what are you doing?
Totally. Yeah, and it's like there's this situation in which she's had this interesting life.
Right.
And some of it will have prepared her really well for the situation she's going to face in this scenario. And some of it will have incorrectly prepared her. There will be some solutions that she has that are unique and interesting, and there will be some that she has that are wrong. And I think, if you'd slightly adjusted that situation so that maybe she'd bought him a really expensive dinner because in her past that was how they got rewarded in the military or something, I don't know.
Whatever.
She then tried to do the same thing for him, but then realized it didn't work because it has a different effect on a different kind of person, you know?
Yeah.
And so she needs to be challenged as the protagonist, and she needs to have her principles and her ideas around the world challenged, because it didn't really feel like her ideas were being challenged at all. It felt like, oh yeah, this person's totally right about everything. You know?
Yeah, totally. And I kept expecting that the teachers to step in and say, you're doing this wrong. They did like once. They said, well, you should stick to the curriculum. But other than that, here's an unqualified teacher who has no experience, and they don't even observe her in the classroom at all. So of course she goes off on some, tangent and goes on her own Dylan thing. But like, I get it. She was in the military, didn't work out. It's another go. It's a do-over with teenagers in high school. She needs to be flawed. She needs to acknowledge the flaws, and she needs to learn and ultimately grow and win. And at the end of this, the kid with the leather jacket needs to walk up to her and say, with his graduation cap, right, and go, "You're the best teacher I ever had. And I'm the first kid in my family ever to graduate high school. And also, here's that $200. A deal is a deal." And then they put their fists together in that sort of arm lock, like sort of a military, sort of like a high five at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. The clear fix is we need to feel invested in this person. We need to understand where they're from and what they're trying to do. And they need to be challenged and they need to fail. You can't just watch people succeed.
Yeah.
Superman has his kryptonite, right? You need somebody's weaknesses to be shown and exposed.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it just doesn't work and it doesn't land.
What's Michelle Pfeiffer's kryptonite in this movie? She might quit her job and go do something else?
Yeah.
Is that it?
She had loads of options available to her. Like, oh, okay. Yeah. So that's how you would fix the film.
Oh my God. So Emma, there's only one more thing that we need to do, and that is we need to rate this movie. I would love to know, on a scale of 1 to 5, super fancy chicken dinners from a super fancy restaurant, how many chickens would you give the 1995 classic, Dangerous Minds?
I'm going to give this film 2.5 chickens because it had some interesting ideas and themes, but as we've just pointed out, there were some really, really major flaws in the script, unfortunately. And I spent a lot of the film thinking about like, I think you need to change this, which unfortunately, once you start looking into film theory in any way, is what happens. But yeah, I think it could have been better, and yeah, some of it was just a bit, ugh. Yeah.
I'm gonna give it 3 chicken dinners. For everything you just said, I'd give it slightly higher, if for no other reason than it feels nostalgic for me. It was the first time I ever saw an R-rated movie, which is kind of cool. You know, that's a moment, I suppose. And it brings me right back to the Regal Cinemas in Huntington Valley, Pennsylvania, in 1995. But upon closer inspection, it's not the best movie ever, right? So 3. That's my score. Final answer. End of. Hey, Emma, before we go, do you mind giving us some dope poetry?
I thought you'd never ask.
I thought I would never ask, but I'm asking.
Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way, do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on that sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
Hey, I don't know anything about poetry, but that poem, pretty good.
Pretty good, yeah.
Well, thanks for listening to this episode of Plot Twisters.
Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Just eat it, get yourself an egg and beat it, oh Lord. Have some more chicken, have some more pie. It doesn't matter if it's broiled or fried, just eat it. He's exceptional. Weird Al is exceptional. The end.